Welcome everyone to our Biking with Mark Talks at Google. My name is Dan Smedley and I am a transportation manager at Google, responsible for Google Bike programs. Today we're going to do about 40 minutes of Q&A between Mark and myself, and then we're going to move on to viewer questions. So for all of you watching, please add your questions on the YouTube chat. And speaking of that, why don't you go ahead right now and add in to where you're tuning in from. Go ahead into the YouTube chat and send us your comments of where you're tuning in from. That'd be great. So there's a saying that goes, if it isn't on Strava, then it never happened. But what are people talking about when they say that? Well, they're saying that if you didn't upload your workout on Strava for all your connections to see, then maybe it never happened. I think that's a testament to how popular the Strava app is to active people all over the world. Today, we are lucky to be talking to Mark Gainey, one of the founders of Strava. So let's welcome Mark.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, yeah.
So first question, were you able to get a workout in this morning?
Yeah, as luck would have it. I was up a little early. I was trying to sort of beat the sunrise out there. I didn't win, but it was fun to be out on a mountain bike.
Oh, nice. I was able to get a ride in too. Nice chill morning, early as well. Peaceful, rode around the Back Bay in Newport Beach. It was great for the most part until I ran into a swarm of gnats, which I guess that's a hazard of riding on trails near the water.
That's it. Yeah, no, I was dodging bunny rabbits and various squirrels this morning out on the trails, but I'm not going to complain. If that's what I can do at 6 or 7 a.m., that's a good way to start the day.
Yeah, great way to start. Absolutely. So I think it would be great for our listeners if you could walk them through the Strava journey. So the first question has to be, why Strava? What market niche were you addressing with the product?
You know, the answer to that question is really, I guess there's two sides to it. There's a very personal why Strava, and then maybe there's a more sort of global or commercial version. At the personal side, you got to go back a ways. In fact, you got to go back to the last century. My co-founder, Michael Horvath, and I, we met in college. We were on the crew team together. And it's relevant not only because we developed this friendship and have enjoyed building companies together now for the past 25 years, but it's also where we had this magical experience in that boathouse, you know, being on the crew team and rowing and competing and just everything that came with it, the esprit de corps, the camaraderie, the trash talking. It was great. And the only problem was we graduated and poof, that whole thing was gone. Yeah. So ironically, as early as 1995, we had a business plan that was, hey, how do we recreate this amazing experience we had being on a team, but maybe try to use the internet as a way to sort of create some virtual locker room. Now, you know, kind of good news, bad news. The bad news was we were a little early in terms of the idea, but the fundamentals were always there. And this idea of sort of me personally needing a source of motivation was important. So when you fast forward to 2008, 2009, when Michael and I decided to go start another company, thankfully the world had changed and this idea still made sense. And frankly, I think that the more global reason that we were excited was we just saw how powerful sports can be for us personally in our lives. When I'm active, frankly, I'm a better parent, I'm a better coworker, I'm a better partner. And so we wanted to see if we could give that gift to everybody else.
Yeah, totally understand. It's been said around here, if I'm getting a little grumpy, that my family says, go get a workout in, you know? Totally understand.
It's very true. We always talk about the physical fitness side of it, but I think the mental side of being active is underrated.
Yeah, so were there any surprises to you about the response to the app?
Oh, yeah, interesting question. So in the early days, a couple things for context. First, when we started, we went with a strategy that we like to refer to as inch wide, mile deep. And what I mean by that was we picked one very specific sport, really cycling, or even more specifically sort of road cycling. And we decided to go create a very rich experience for that audience, for somebody who was passionate about their cycling. The other thing to know about us is that we started really pre-mobile. So the experience on Strava was go on a ride with some kind of cycling watch or computer on your handlebar, come back and plug it into the back of your computer and try to upload it into Strava. So what was fascinating to us, to answer your question, in terms of surprises, one, I was amazed how early on the lengths at which cyclists would go to ensure that their upload got up. I mean, it was really funny. They would run multiple devices to ensure that they captured the data.
Right.
I would see them more often than not, if they ever forgot to maybe start a watch as they headed off on their ride, many of them would go back to the beginning just to ensure they got the whole thing.
You mean like ride back to the start and start?
Yeah, they'd go back. Hopefully they'd figure it out soon, but we'd talk to all kinds of folks.
That's like, commitment.
Yeah, it's commitment. They wanted the whole thing on there. So just fun to see. But that pre-mobile era, and then once we launched our app, the level of social interaction was really fascinating amongst the cycling community on Strava.
So it's interesting. You said you wanted to take that deep dive into cycling, but now there's so many other activities that can be uploaded. What does the breakdown look like today? How many cycling trips are uploaded versus running and other sports? Yeah,
no, it's a great question. So you're right. For the first almost 4 years of Strava's existence, we were very cycling only. You could download the cycling app, and that's what you did. And we stayed sort of authentic to that audience. And then around 2012, 2013, we launched our second experience, which was in running, and began to sort of build that experience, and all kinds of mistakes along the way as we tried to sort of go from being sort of authentic to cyclists to trying to now support two very different audiences. If fast forward to today, it's a really fun global community. I mean, we support 30, 35 different sports on Strava. You can do everything from kiteboarding to Nordic skiing to walking and hiking. And so we've got it all there. It's become a global audience. Started here in the Bay Area. That's where we're headquartered in San Francisco, but we now support, I think 82% of our members are outside the United States. We're in 195 countries.
That's great.
So it's a
global really community, right?
It is.
You were talking about at first how you wanted to recreate that experience of camaraderie, but now it's a global community actually that has that experience.
It's really fun. I think one of the unique aspects of Strava is that you have access to this global group, and you can see these amazing things that happen on Strava every day, depending on sort of who you follow. But in the same way, you can actually have this really intimate, it's almost like my little tribe on Strava, my subgroup, the folks that I follow, and it's usually what's going on in my backyard, who's on my trails or the roads around me, who am I competing against. And so there's a fun sort of almost hyper-local experience to Strava.
Yeah. Well, this discussion is primarily about cycling, so we're going to delve into that right now. So what are some of the cycling trends you are seeing with so many people working from home right now?
Oh, yeah. It's been a fascinating few months. You're absolutely right. With COVID-19, we've seen a few things. One, just sort of stating the obvious, activity levels are just way up. I think people have realized that they're going to take this time that they have and they're going to focus on their health and their wellness. And so we're just seeing more people. We're seeing more people on Strava, and we're seeing those people be more active. So on a weekly basis, they're exercising more. We're seeing time of day has changed. It used to be that cycling was very much, particularly during the week, you either got up early and you got your ride in before work, or if the light was good, maybe you were riding afterwards. Now we're seeing, across the time spectrum, people are finding the time. They'll go for their noon ride, or they'll go late morning, or, I just think that there's a level of flexibility that comes with people's work from home status. And then we've seen some really interesting data, Dan, relative to some of the lockdown situations. We could look at Spain and Italy here if you go back just 2 months ago, where they were severely locked down. I mean, really not allowed to be out at all unless it was essential. And so what we saw were these big spikes in indoor activities, virtual rides, right. People connecting their bicycles to trainers. So I would say that those maybe be the three key trends that we've seen in the last few months.
Yeah, I'm a Zwift user, and getting on Zwift was amazing because, in the beginnings there, you could be out on the road with a handful of people, but now, during COVID, it was just jammed with people. It was amazing. Everybody getting their virtual rides going.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know how many people are familiar with Zwift, but it's a pretty amazing sort of immersion into this. All of a sudden you're riding virtually with thousands of other people
from all over. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about you. My biggest challenge is I get in there thinking I'm going to go do an easy ride. And the next thing I know, I'm chasing some person that I have no idea who he is, but I know I can keep up with him, and it drives me
Absolutely.
nuts.
Yeah. I know all about that for sure. Well, on the Strava site, it states that segments are one of the coolest features. And segments are portions of road or trail created by members who can compare times. So heavy users of Strava, these are passionate people, and they obsess over segments and leaderboards. How did that whole feature get going?
Yeah, the birth of segments. So again, we'll go back quite a ways. We'll go back to our early days. One of the things that we were very fortunate to do, because we were so focused on the cycling community and spending a lot of time with them. And Michael and I, historically, we love to ride our bikes, but we are not terribly good cyclists. I always like to joke. I've spent more time in a hospital from bicycle accidents than I have on the road. But in talking to them, we really started to understand some of the nuances around the culture of the sport and the things that were important to them. And one of the things we heard over and over was the simple fact that regardless of the length of a ride, someone would go out for 5 miles or they go out for 100, somewhere in the middle of that ride was a climb, was basically a segment, but really it was a climb that was really important to them. And the more we talked to them, we realized, gosh, I bet that there's a way we could auto-identify these climbs inside the data. And if we could auto-identify those, we could begin to give them something that just isn't available anywhere else. So the birth of segments was this identification of a climb, categorizing it, which was also important to the cycling community. How hard is it, basically? And there's an international standard for that. And then once we rolled that out, what happened was the cyclist very quickly said, this is great, but I really want to know how my buddy's doing on that same climb. How can I compare my ride to his ride or my segment? And so that's where leaderboards were born. We're out of this idea of, okay, well, we can give you some context. We can show you how you're doing relative to whether it's your peers or your age group, or, however you want to slice the information. And I don't think we ever anticipated the success or the fervor with which that would be would come in behind segments. But today you can go create a segment anywhere you want. You can create it on your driveway if you're so desired. You can track it. Yeah, it's been really fun to just watch the evolution of them and the way that people are being creative with them. There's always new competitions and things that are happening.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the classification of climbs. Which is something that the road cycling crew probably knows about if they watch Tour de France or something like that. But you said there's an international standard. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. And if somebody's making their own segment and it happens to be up a hill, how is a categorization assigned?
Yeah. So, and again, the science behind this is probably beyond my pay scale. We've got really smart people who figure this out. But at a basic level, what we're doing is just looking at grade. So we're looking at the rated elevation and the distance. And that's by looking at those two things. That's how you're exactly right. If you were to watch the Tour de France, at the beginning of every episode, they'll kind of have that beautiful graphic that will show, oh, that's a category 1 climb, which is pretty easy, or get 2. And so, and then ultimately you get to these, what they call HCs, right? Basically beyond categorization climbs, these really steep, iconic, the Alpe d'Huezes of France.
Sure.
So we just applied the same principles. We could identify both the elevation gain or loss and the distance that someone was going. And you identify the start and stop point. Or we could look at sort of where that process started when we were auto-identifying them. We don't do that anymore. And that's where we were able then to create that classification.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kudos to you and the team. Creating segments is so easy.
It is interesting. It may be a little too easy. We have a lot of people who tend to create segments on top of other segments.
On top of other segments,
and things. So we have what's called segment noise. it's a real problem. We're acutely aware of it. We are constantly looking for creative ways and innovative ways to make that easier to handle.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like the Mount Diablo climb in the Bay Area has, I don't know, well over 100 segments on that climb.
Yeah, there's the good news is for anybody who uses Strava, there's ways to hide those. You can easily go in and hide any segment that's not relevant to you. So we've tried to build tools for our athletes so that they can kind of control their own experience. And I've come to appreciate, somebody cares about the whole climb up Diablo, and other people only care about
one piece,
the first quarter mile. Yeah. And so that's how do we sort of create an experience that's helpful for everybody?
Yeah. Awesome. So I noticed recently that there were some changes to the information that people can obtain without a subscription, right? Like viewing segment history. So what precipitated these changes and where are you headed?
Yeah. So a little bit of context. If you look at Strava as a business, we have always been, from day one, going back again, 2009, a freemium business. So we absolutely offer a free experience for Strava in perpetuity. It's not like you can just try it and then you have to subscribe. It's you can use elements of Strava for free as long as you'd like. And then we always had an upgrade path. We always had an opportunity for, if you were interested in the additional features that we offer on the subscription side, you could upgrade to that. And that served us well. Recent years, we experimented across some other revenue models. We began thinking about different ways in which we could integrate partners into the experience and so forth. And frankly, Dan, there was a decision on the part of the company earlier this year to, frankly, go back to our roots, to recognize that we're at our best when we're really clear that we have one customer, and that customer is our athlete. It's the person who's using Strava, hopefully every day, but using it on a frequent basis. And that in order for us to do that, we needed to just focus our efforts. And part of that was let's eliminate a lot of these other business models and things that are confusing us as a business and frankly confusing our athletes. Let's make sure we have one customer, and that's the athlete. And then let's focus in on the business model associated with that. And that was the subscription. So really putting the subscription at the center of the Strava experience. And so in doing that, we launched two critical things. One was, if you look over the last 4 months, I think we introduced, 54 new improvements to the athlete experience inside Strava. Like we are just obsessing over fixing bugs, innovations, new features, just trying to ramp that up. And the second thing that we did was we took a hard look at really where are the complex elements of our experience that are frankly expensive for us, Strava. We're still a privately held company. We're not yet profitable. And so we took a hard look. And as you just alluded to, there were elements of the segment experience that segments themselves they're expensive. And so we didn't remove segments completely from the free experience, but there were certain things like segment history and so forth that we moved over. And we knew it was controversial. We had members tell us that.
Yeah. What has been the feedback on that?
It's been great. I would say that we were as transparent as we possibly could, exactly what we were doing. We were there to answer every question. And I would say the vast majority of our membership stands and appreciates that we're there for them. That's what we're committed to. This is a commitment to our athlete community. And they also understand that we're kind of on a mission to prove to them that what we're building is worth buying, that there's value there. And if you don't see the value today, we understand. But we're on a mission to create something that has enough value where you ultimately say, this is a no-brainer. And the folks who had a problem with that, we understand, but we remind them that free is still there. And they're more than welcome to remain a free member, and we support them. We're going to continue to improve the free as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for that detailed explanation. I appreciate it. So let's talk about another really cool user experience, and that's challenges. And for those listeners that are not familiar with challenges, maybe first you can explain what they are and how they operate within the Strava ecosystem.
Sure. Yeah, it kind of goes back to this sort of mission that we have, which is to just motivate and inspire folks to just stay active and help them improve. And one thing that we've found is when you introduce basically virtual events, that's what a challenge is on Strava. There's all different flavors of them, but if you introduce those and allow people to participate in them, we see really good things happen. We see people just end up being more active, more consistent. So, examples would be everything from you can do the monthly Grand Fondo, where we challenge you to go ride 100K in a single ride, to, how many feet of elevation can you climb in any given month? I know there's one that just launched. Kate Courtney, who's a prior world champion in mountain biking, she's launching one with Strava to challenge people to go do 10,000 feet of climbing in 10 days. Right, so it's that kind of thing that just it's really there to inspire people to set a goal and go after it.
Does the data back up that the more challenges that are offered, the more people that join a challenge, the more likely they are to complete it or do more activity to meet that goal?
Oh yeah, it's really fascinating. We see a couple things, whether it's joining challenges or setting goals inside Strava. There's one stat I know where what is it now? Those people who set goals in Strava, I think 92% of them are still active 10 months later. Which is a much better performance than others. We've seen another fun stat. We keep track of a really interesting ratio inside Strava, which is the percentage of time spent in app, actually looking at the data versus the percentage of time being active. And right now that ratio is about 50-1. So for every 1 minute they're in the app, they're being active 50 plus minutes. And we're actually watching that ratio increase. So we're actually seeing people be more active longer compared to the time in app. And it may sound counterintuitive for an ad company. In theory, we want them like staring at the screen, but it's just not the case. The more that we can get people to be active,
get people out and moving, right?
It works great.
In terms of challenges, I've noticed some recent partnerships with companies like Honey Stinger and Roka. Tell us about those partnerships and what's on the horizon with third parties. Are they sponsoring these challenges?
Yeah, so that's a great example. So that's a good example where the thesis is frankly really simple, which is when we bring partners and sponsors into the challenges, they end up being more fun for our athletes. So it's a really athlete-centric way of thinking about it. But we just realized that if a sponsor, like a company like you just mentioned, a Roka or Honey Stinger or Lululemon or whoever it might be, is involved and maybe offers a prize or some kind of reward for finishing a challenge, that's just additional motivation. So we've seen that. We've had great partners on the nonprofit side. We did a great one with POW, Protect Our Winters, earlier this year, Crush It for Climate, where we're just trying to bring awareness to that and awareness to environmental issues. During COVID, we did one with the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, helping them raise capital for the healthcare workers and the frontline workers. So any way we can find partners that can increase the value of a challenge that then just helps motivate people get out and maybe do more than they otherwise would, it's a win-win. Yeah,
it's great, super cool. I mean, I after my ride this morning, I got the Roka challenge, and it came with, some money off on my next purchase with Roka, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is it's akin to what you see in the real world. If you sign up for your Century ride or that local Criterion or something, and there's the sponsor goodie bag and so forth. It's sort of one more incentive to maybe get you out there on that Saturday morning.
Yeah, very cool. So I'm a club member with the Newport Coast Triathlon team. There's a little plug for them right there. So one of the clubs that I have on Strava, and there's always a question that we wonder about: is there a development path for these users to create own challenges, especially at the club level? Anything on the horizon?
Yeah, Dan, I knew these questions are going to start coming. The feature requests.
Right.
It's a great one. Actually, what you're talking about, the whole idea of sort of self-serve challenges and bringing that to our community so they can go and continue to be creative. We've actually seen a lot of creativity just in the last 3 months during COVID, where for lack of any physical events, people have done some really fun things just using the Strava platform. So not deflecting your question, the answer is yes, we hear it a lot. I think I can safely say it's on the roadmap. What I won't say is I won't give you any kind of timeline for what we're going to get out. I'd be in a lot of trouble if I did that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So at Google, within the transportation team, we are very interested in supporting bike commuters. And Strava has commute challenges, and they allow users to mark a ride as a commute. How successful have these features been with supporting bike commuting?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think we've tried to figure out sort of what is the role of the commute. And the fundamental thing inside Strava is every ride counts, every activity counts. And so anybody who says that a commute shouldn't be there, I'm here to counter that argument pretty vehemently. And you're right, we've done some challenges out there to try to promote it. We had one challenge recently, I think 350,000 participants logging their commutes and really sharing with the world that, hey, not only does it count, but it's really important. And we'd argue it's important on two fronts. Not only is the commute, or maybe three. If you're commuting, it's a great sort of from a physical wellness standpoint. Two, you're taking another car off the road. Three, we can make an argument that you're contributing to something inside Strava that you may not even be aware of, which is that data, that commute data, is helping us really understand sort of traffic patterns and things inside wherever you are and whatever city you might live in that can help us then work with partners to create even better cycling infrastructure going forward. So yeah, we're huge advocates of the commute, and it absolutely belongs on Strava. Sometimes a feed gets a little clogged up with a lot of commutes, and so we're building ways to sort of improve that. But yeah, no, it's a great thing.
That's a great segue, because I have some of my friends that don't necessarily want to see my 5-mile bike commute day in and day out, right? So is there any development plans to allow users to set filters to see only what they want to see?
What we have today is kind of on the other side too. If you are uploading commutes, you can easily make those private versus public. So that's one way where the data will still sort of count towards all of your fitness and sort of your monthly cumulative efforts and so forth, but it won't show up in other people's feeds. That's the easiest way to solve that today. The longer term question that you're asking is a really good one around sort of filtering of the feed and how we can continue to make it more customized and personable for you. We launched some features just in the last 60 days around being able to favorite certain people that you follow. We've actually also, I believe it's out now, the ability to mute, so the opposite side. So if you're just seeing, but that's on the people side. That's not on specific activities. It turns out it gets way more complex when we're trying to actively filter the difference between someone's commute, a virtual ride, and so forth. So there's some really smart teams inside Strava who are thinking through this and kind of the evolution of our feed, but it'll take us some time to get it right.
Fair enough. The next question I have for you is about how you engage with users. I mean, we've already noted that the workout crowd, cycling crowd are very passionate. They always have a million ideas for you, I'm sure, about feature requests. What's the intake mechanism? What are you doing with all these messages you're getting about how you can improve the product?
Yeah, we've always joked, we may not have the largest community in the world, but we have the most passionate community. and we will take that every day of the week. So we recognize, Michael and I, we mean this with all sincerity, we lost control of Strava years ago to our community, and we're just trying to shepherd it as best we can. We do listen, sometimes, frankly, better than others. We're the first to acknowledge that part of what we talked about when we made some of the changes was there've just been times in our history when we got so wrapped up in some of our initiatives inside Strava that we probably weren't listening like we could have. And so we're really trying hard to rethink how we do that, the infrastructure we put in place. We've got an amazing community management team that you can easily write into, and they'll be responsive. They are buried right now. We're a small team. We're 180 people, and it is really, we're trying hard. So I want to give them credit that the effort is there, but I promise we're trying to think through it.
Yeah, so the message is keep sending those feature requests and keep communicating, but be
Yeah.
patient, right?
And there's some forums. So we have forums that are specific to Strava that you can go. You have to go to our website and use those, and that actually really gives you an opportunity to do the feature requests where you can put them in specifically. And we read those. Like we see them. I see them. I see them come into my inbox and so forth. We look outside. We watch all the other social feeds. We watch Reddit. So we're listening to our community. If I was to just set expectations, it's not that we're not listening. It's just the volume of feedback it's amazing, and the passion and everybody's, and there's rarely an idea that's bad, rarely. But the noise of the opportunities is
sure. Like, I think you're just being nice there, Mark.
No, I'm telling you. I mean, there's some that are pretty crazy, but when I think about it, it's like that actually makes a lot of sense. So that's, again, maybe if I'm kind of now making my little pitch, it's like we're 180 folks. I think sometimes people think that we're like 10,000 people and we're almost as big as Google. It's like we're not. We're trying really hard. But yeah, we do want to hear, and we're just trying to explain to people there's context around how we're trying to get it all right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Moving on. So several of my cycling friends liked to pair their sensors, like a heart rate monitor, directly to the Strava app. And I know this feature was deprecated last October. Maybe you can tell me what led to that decision to deprecate that capability.
Yeah, that's a really good one where we made a tough decision at the time. So background on that was that we had the ability using our mobile app. So somebody who was recording from our mobile app could connect certain Bluetooth devices, let's say a heart rate monitor, and that would read into the app and then obviously upload into Strava. But there was a problem, which was the way that code was structured. It was making the app itself highly unstable. It was, we were seeing lots of crashes, getting lots of talk about feedback. Like we were getting a lot of folks writing in saying, it's not capturing my data correctly. It's crashing, to millions of people. And so we went and looked and we identified where the problem was. We then did a quick analysis of, okay, what percentage of our members are using this feature, this Bluetooth feature? And it was less than 2%. And so we made a very hard decision at the time, which is it's better to stabilize the app right now for this huge percentage of our population that's trying to use it every day versus this 1.5%, 2% of the folks who need to do it, because there are other ways to get that information in by connecting through other devices. And so we made that hard choice. It's a perfect example. We absolutely heard from that 2%. And you know what? My answer is there's a short term and there's midterm and there's long-term solutions to this. And we recognize that, but just so people understand the context of the decision, that was how it was made at the time.
Yeah, fair enough. Appreciate that explanation. So you touched on something earlier about, getting those bike commutes, uploaded on Strava because that data is useful outside of just, the community and the users. And I want to talk a little bit about that because one of, the transportation team where I work, one of our main goals is to get people safely to work. And if they're biking, all the better. And I know that Strava Metro is partnering with city governments in order to improve things like biking infrastructure. So maybe you can talk about that product and how that developed.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Strava Metro was a project that we launched, I think it's now been 4 or 5 years ago. It was somewhat reactive. We actually had one of our Strava members who reached out to us who happened to work for Department of Transportation in Oregon. And she had some really great questions, which was, I'm out here. I'm obviously a passionate cyclist, but I'm also working a lot with city planners and others to rethink our infrastructure around cycling and pedestrian pathways and so forth. And I'm curious if Strava's ever looked at its data to sort of see if, in fact, there's insight that we can glean from that. So that was the catalyst for us really taking the time to not just look at our heat maps and looking at sort of activity, but actually go a level deeper and take particularly these urban environments where we've got good concentration of Strava athletes, and begin to look at not only the heat, in other words, sort of the concentration of activities, but frankly, the movement. And we saw some fascinating things. We really began to see sort of the changing patterns, the way in which there's patterns based on seasons. There's patterns based on, is it rush hour or is it Saturday afternoon at 3? And it turns out that cyclists, by definition, if you're local, you're the best source of sort of knowledge when it comes to navigating through a city. You know where the potholes are, you know which one-way streets you should or shouldn't be going down. And so by looking at our information, we could then give these city planners, local governments, nonprofits, some really interesting insights around not only the shifting ways in which the population was changing, but when they would make a change, we could quickly start to do some before and afters and see if it had been effective. So if you fast forward to today, we've had over 300 partners worldwide, where our commitment really goes right back to our athletes. We want to work with these city planners because we want to make these environments safer, or at least more effective for our athletes, for our cyclists and runners and others.
That's fantastic. Thanks for doing that as a bike commuter, pre-COVID. I mean, I appreciate that. And can you share any success stories or anything that came out of Metro that was particularly interesting?
Yeah, I think yes. I mean, I'll give you one example, like Queensland, Australia, and putting a lot of thought into literally a bike bridge to try to pull them off of a congested area. And, just being able to see the before and after, the quotes that we would start to get back from folks were pretty phenomenal, where being able to sort of redirect that traffic and bring them over, and now watching sort of not just that they redirected and made it safer, but we can actually look at it. I don't have the exact statistics in front of us, but the increase in cycling traffic that now takes place over that bridge was the kind of evidence that Queensland knew that, this was good investment. So it's, we've got a long ways to go here in the United States relative to this infrastructure. I tell you, the work we're doing, particularly in Europe, where they really are really light years ahead of sort of thinking about environments where the city is owned by the cyclist and can make it safer and healthier and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. One final question before we, take some audience questions. What is the craziest thing you've seen on Strava?
Oh man, we could spend hours here. What's funny, Dan? Like literally, this isn't quite cycling, but it's worth telling you just because it literally came in this morning. There was a report out of the BBC. There was a gentleman who he basically is at the top of our leaderboard for total miles run in the month of May. He ran like 832 miles, and he did it all around his coffee table inside his apartment in the UK. We saw that. We saw some amazing things during this whole Everest phenomenon. I don't know if you see this Everesting, where we have cyclists that are going out and they're trying to figure out how fast they can basically climb the same elevation as basically summiting Everest. And they're not just going out and doing it; they're doing it in these record times. So really,
there's been some high-profile people doing that challenge too.
Oh yeah, the global competition. So those are fun. The Strava art. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but that's the ability to go out and do a ride where when you finish on the map,
that's right,
you have this picture of something. And we've seen everything from marriage proposals that are done with Strava art to political statements to people just creating some really, again, sort of motivational, joyful things. So yeah, those are just a few examples, but almost every day I'm surprised by something. Someone named their baby after Strava a few months back. Like that's passion.
That's dedication, right there. Dedication. For sure. Yeah, I'm always amazed with the Strava art. I'm like, wow, that's you got to plan that. You can't just go out on a whim and try to get that done.
Oh yeah, the effort. I've tried. My art is. I am not an artist. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's like really, are you going left or you go
yeah, I don't know how they do it, but it's really amazing.
Well, why don't we change directions now and take some questions from the audience? I know that some people have been writing in, so let's get going with that. So we have a question that popped up on the screen there. So any plans for Strava to make its own cycling computer? It's from Jessica.
Yeah, we get that asked a lot. So we've had a very specific strategy from day one. We refer to it as Switzerland, and that is that we have been well served by supporting all of the other cycling computers that are on the market, whether they're coming from Garmin or Sunto or Wahoo or Polar, you name it. And that's served us well, I think, on two fronts. One, just because of the diverse needs across this global population, kind of meeting them where they're already doing their cycling, meeting them with the products they already have, made a lot of sense. And frankly, to be candid, I think there's a reason they call it hardware. It's really hard to do. And so it's hard enough to do our software right. And so we're very comfortable remaining, I don't want to say neutral, but remaining committed to being the software platform that these devices can work from. So no plans in the near future to go into hardware business.
Yeah, fair enough. So next question up on the screen, are there plans to ever introduce shorter cycling distance challenges like 5 to 10K running ones?
Yeah, that's a great request that I will take a note here and make sure I go back to my challenge team. It's the short answer is we're looking for creative ways all the time to keep people motivated. And if we need to sort of shorten the distances, by all means, we're kind of looking for that sweet spot. So it's a great one. I'd have to talk to the team to know.
Wow, very good. Next question up. How do we get them to start implementing Google Maps plus Google Cloud Platform?
Yeah,
I told you that question might come up.
Yeah, that's right. Again, probably beyond my pay grade at Strava. Great questions. I know we've worked with Google Maps many times in the past. I don't know what the status is. We've got relationships across the board, but Google's willing to remember that we're not yet profitable when we're a tiny little company, and they can cut us a great deal. We're all ears.
Next one up from Sam. Will you be able to include raw power through the API?
Raw power through the API. So I'm assuming he's asking, not sure what I'm guessing what he means by that is that power coming directly from the power devices themselves. Again, what I would say is, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, it looks like Sam put up a follow-on question there. Has anyone created a third-party app with the Strava API? Okay,
and maybe these two are related. So our Strava API, I think we're now somewhere north of 40,000 API partners. So there are actually quite a few different apps and services that are available through it. In answer to the first question, and again, I'm just not sure what he meant by raw power. You can definitely pull your power data through various devices and into Strava, and then we calculate that. And if you don't have it, we have other ways that we try to calculate power, but we set all the requisite sort of caveats.
Right.
There, we know.
Not easy.
You and I both know, yeah, that's an art, not a science. But relative to other apps, yeah, there's some great, the one that comes to mind very quickly, there's a company called VeloViewer. They've been around for years. It's a great small team that has developed some really good analytics using the API. So you just upload to Strava, but then you can go to VeloViewer for a whole bunch of different analytics and visualizations that we don't do. So we've worked hard to support our API partners.
All right, next one up from Jessica. When is Strava going to make their own stationary system to create an indoor experience that people are yearning for the outdoors right now that may be limited due to shelter in place?
Yeah, you and I were talking earlier about that Zwift experience. So yeah. I think it's similar to the position we've taken with the device manufacturers that I mentioned earlier. There are some great indoor solutions that are out there. The two that quickly come to mind would be Zwift and Peloton, and they're both great partners for Strava. So in both cases, if you've invested in either of those, we make it really easy for you as soon as you finish your indoor ride, it goes straight to Strava. And so you have all the feedback that you get from those specific devices or those specific experiences, as well as the ability to have it sort of be placed inside Strava and part of your cumulative sort of stats.
And there's segments, right? The Zwift segments.
There are.
Show up there? Yeah.
We just did a major release with them where we actually cleaned, or that's our first attempt at kind of cleaning that up, because there was a lot of what we referred to earlier as segment noise there. There was a lot of segments being created. And so we've worked with Zwift to create a more compelling experience where you kind of know what are the iconic segments that you're going after. So that's right. Strava's integrated in that. And we like that idea of just thinking about ways in which we can integrate into these existing experience and vice versa.
All right, next one up. With the renewed strategy in place, will the product team focus on personal performance, such as training plans, FTP improvement, or more of the social side, such as clubs, segments, and challenges?
Yeah, boy, this is a hot topic inside.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It is, and I fully get it. And this is a perfect example of the tightrope that we feel we walk all the time, because I can tell you that I'll bet you that half of my population on Strava and would hope that I would answer one way on this question, and the other half would hope on the other side. The short answer may not be very compelling, but it's actually, we see 5 categories of areas that are of critical importance to Strava going forward. And one of those areas on community is what we describe, but it's not our global community. It's each individual's community inside Strava. And that to us is important. So whether it's clubs, whether it's better communication, it's the ability to plan rides together and so forth, we feel that's really important for the future. And so that would fall kind of on that social category. But we also see that there's a world where, your training and your performance and just sort of understanding how we can be insightful, how we can help you understand what's going on with your training is really important for well. We've always talked about Strava in terms of there's a single player mode and there's the multiplayer mode. And in single player mode, you want to understand how your fitness and your cycling life, what's happening there. And Strava, we know we have a responsibility to do that. And then that multiplayer mode is so much of the fun with Strava comes with that ability to interact with others, and whether it's looking at leaderboards or it's working in a club and setting up a Saturday afternoon ride. We know we have a lot of improvements to make there. So the short answer is we're growing the teams in such a way that we can go after each one in a Strava specific way.
Next question up from Stanley. Can you share what the team did in particular to get customer buy-in to the app in the early days of Strava? How did you work with the hardware vendors such as Garmin to get everything in line?
Yeah. So the short answer is we have historically always focused, rather than on growth and trying to get buy-in that way, we focused on what we just refer to as engagement. More important for us to find the cyclist or the athlete today, regardless of sport, who genuinely is enjoying the experience, is finding joy in Strava. And the reason that that's important is not only now do we have a good chance at having them as a long-term customer and partner with us, but they're our best source for new athletes coming to Strava, word of mouth. And we've tried all kinds of different growth strategies. The number one way for us to grow historically has been when our customers are really happy and they tell their friends and more people come on. So how do we get buy-in in the app? By really 2 things: ensuring that people were engaged and having fun, and then giving them reasons to invite their friends to join. Leaderboards are more fun when your friends are on them. Challenges are more fun when your friends are participating in them. Clubs are more fun when you invite your friends in. So by giving them that ability, that really helped the app take off.
Yeah, awesome. All right, one more question up here from Dan. Given segments are behind the paywall now, to a certain extent, how do you see the competition with other free services evolving in the future, such as Garmin Connect?
Yeah, so I think what you started to say there is an important sort of clarification. Segments are not behind the paywall. Elements of the segment experience are, and others are not. So you still have a lot of segment experience on the free side, and we continue to invest on both of those sides to just improve that. How do we look at competition? We take it seriously. He happened to mention Garmin. I mean, that is a great partner of ours. They are focused on continuing to build world-class hardware that whether it's on the wrist or it's on the handlebars. We're integrating Strava. We just announced where you can now do Strava routes directly onto the Garmin devices themselves. And so we worry about competition all the time. We're acutely aware of the way the world can shift very quickly underneath our feet. But I think we also are comfortable with our position and why we're asking for $5 a month.
Right.
I think it's pretty good value. So if it's not there yet, trust me, we're going to make it worth the value.
Yeah, no, awesome. There's some information streaming on the bottom where you can visit strava.com for more information. So I think that's it, Mark. We really appreciate you coming by as a user of Strava. It's been a great pleasure to talk with you and learn more about kind of your experience in creating the app and what you've learned along the way. Huge fan. So thanks so much for making the app available and allowing all of us users to upload our workouts.
Dan, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
Great. Thanks.